Okay, so we should be all set then. You found us.
Oh. You did. It was easy. It's always easy. I love the church here, the senior garden and the sculpture, especially the stations on the bottom. It's so human. And then the real light comes inside.
It seems like a little country church in the city.
It is.
And how's your trip been?
Oh, very nice. We got up at 2:30 yesterday morning to make sure that we got our flight, which was very early. You know, West Coast to East Coast. Yes. And got here just in time to see the debate. And then went to sleep, which was a real thrill, the debate. I thought it was
Big boost.
I think it was a boost for the protest.
People wanted to work junkies.
It is.
You know, and so the first
I know, exactly. He's made himself. You know, I mean, because everybody else. I was and she is still, that was what she is.
Yeah. I will be flying in, I think, there's the cult, but never going to change.
No, and it's hard to change that. You know, originally it wasn't I mean, well, ducks, which was, and it wasn't true then, but you know, I was reading that kind of scientists went around in the 20s and 30s also with immigrants that were coming in, and so there was the original. I know.
How you doing? Good. I think we're okay.
I think we're okay.
And I
Figure
guess
out how Mary Jo wants to do her talk.
yeah, for 30 years now.
Other than no sports. That's their problem out there.
Because all you need is one nut
Yeah.
to say,
Found a lot of magazines, but
so, anyway,
It's
so
all-
it's all there.
You're going to enjoy the slideshow.
I'm
looking forward to really good pictures. And you got things lined up nicely.
Real quick, okay,
should
and
be.
Fred, maybe you can weigh in there.
The short version of our history is like, as I told you, the whole diocese was in a process of reconfiguration. So it's like 2001, and little church, we were very, very small at that point in time. And another parish, which is maybe 2 miles away, both had been opened in 1926. So, and they were, you know, aging out, people moving to the suburbs, and so the diocese intended to close us and make us into the suburbs.
Us means
this church any good?
Well,
Well, that changes, no,
well,
originally it was
originally,
two.
yeah.
And not until, well, St. Mary's got decided, and so my point is that this building was built in 1926. It was the original intended to be temporary structure. It was then called St. Teresa Parish. And so we went through the merger, which you probably have good sense is the community at Early Salas had quite a core group of African American Catholics. Now, in this neck of the woods, there's not a lot of African American Catholics, really anywhere. But the ones that were in Syracuse were there. And so they were very sensitive to church building. Exactly. And a generation earlier, when they built the highway, they decimated the ward down and people covered it. So they're very, 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 very sensitive. So that introduced into our discussions a real strong sense of diversity, honoring diversity, remaining diverse, embracing diversity, and what year is that? 2008 was when, so it was from 2001 to 2008 that this process took place. And then in 2008, Northwood actually was finalized. We were located in this place. And then a few other parishes were also closed. And we'll hear a little bit more about history in Jeffrey's presentation. But that's why we have this beautiful, simple little building that's over 100 years old. Do you have
Not to interrupt the conversation, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Is it okay he does this? Do we trust him?
We can do that.
Probably have words of advice.
Oh, one of the things we did is we closed both of the previous parishes, the original two, and created a whole new name. Yes, the great part because it bred one of these great. But we made a new parish, and this vision of diversity and inclusion
Could you
became
take that out and lower it so I can
our parish included.
You're not gonna do anything to catch me on fire, are you?
I'll try not to.
Oh, yeah, I'll try. How come the not to was late?
We have a growing community of
Thank you.
African refugee Americans, primarily from Congo and Tanzania. Just vibrant, faithful people. Yeah. So, and then when we kind of connected with this LGBT community, this interesting. And then they elected, we'll hear this, but they're like a separate community, and then they, and that's who we're on.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Well, we're right on the campus, actually, university.
We try. Well, at the Moines College, we're very close with Jeffrey. That's, we're right on the edge of Syracuse University. Well, the university itself is and it has quite well-established interfaith
here.
Could you sign my book?
Oh, I'd love to, thank
I have a pen
you.
here, so.
Great, thank
got one
you.
there?
I have one. I better get my things off here because I'm not the only show in town here. So is it Anne Marie with a E? Anne Marie with a E?
No, no. Two
A-N-N?
names, A-N-N, M-A-R-I.
Yeah, it's not like,
You don't have to put sister.
okay, oh, I'm a sister.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. And what do you, what's your work?
I volunteer. I used to work in the parish umpteen years ago. From 10 years, 8 years I was here. So before
Were you teaching or?
I was associate pastor.
Full. Oh, great.
And then I was here for 8 years, so it was
Seems like a very,
72 to whatever it was till 2000.
oh, way back, yeah.
So it's got to be 82 to 2000.
Hi, cousin.
This is Mary Liz.
Hi. I thought this wasn't the kind that smears, but it just might be, so you might want to keep that open.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you, were you, Anne Marie, were you an other sister? Or were you in a religious order?
Yes, Sisters of St. Joseph of Pondoa. There's two other coming from where I live, and I've been 63 years. 63 years.
Our daughter's substitute godmother, because her actual godmother was El Salvador, so her baptism in the States was my friend who was also a sister Sanchez.
We're out of Lake.
Yeah, well, she's Filipino.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Sisters of Hawaii.
I'll tell her. So Liz, thank you so much. Are you Mary Liz? I am. Okay. Are you hyphenated? No. And are you a sister? Are you part of this marriage?
Yes.
Well, I think it's just the spirit of it. I mean, I've only been here an hour. Yeah. So you're, tired with? Yeah. Well, you know what Mary Daly says, if you grew up Catholic, you're kind of like, you can never be a non-Catholic, you can only be a graduate Catholic.
Thank
So-
you so much. I'm
Okay.
so glad. This is awesome that you're here.
Well, I'm so happy to
I
be
knew
here.
you.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming. And you're cousins with, you're cousins with
I'm a
sister.
baby.
Yeah, she said don't call her sister, but you know, you gotta do it.
We all have problems.
It's right, Walt.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
W-A-L-T.
Okay, I can spell Walt.
No, I just, I'm sorry.
I could do it. And you're a part of the parish?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I've been here about 12 years now.
Uh-huh.
Originally from Philly.
It's a ways, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I came up here for a job. I've been in Syracuse since Christmas of 2000. And then,
It's almost 25 years.
yeah, and then I joined this parish in 2000. It would take 13, 12, so
Why'd you choose this one? Geography or nearby or just?
I came in and I was looking for that place
Yeah, I've been hearing some of the background of the church and of Father Mychal too, and it's just, yeah, it's a wonderful place to be. I think no matter who you are, no matter who one is.
Everyone.
That's right. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Walt. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Everybody find a seat. I'm on Apple time. No, that was the only, well, the last slide was the same thing. Once I'm just done with all the welcoming thing, that's the next slide for me after that. Okay, yeah. Mine's not complicated. Yeah, I'll find a seat, please. I'll get started. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone. Welcome to the All Saints Church 2023-24 Father Michael Judge Memorial Award and Lecture Series. I want to thank all for being here, and thank you to those who are joining us live streaming at home. A little housework, of course, is always necessary. Please note exits in the rear and side of church, as well as the restrooms you will find off the greeting area out in the back of church. And as always, this is a Catholic church, we will accept all donations to help our task force to continue to do these kind of special events for our community. So as we get started here, I'd just like to ask Father Fred to lead us in a prayer, and we'll get this ball rolling.
And as we gather this evening, we certainly remember with humility that we're on the territory of the Onondaga Nation. And namaste. The Paschal candle we have burning this evening to, again, remind us of all those who died on 9/11, all those who have died since 9/11 through many different illnesses and through the terrible war and violence in Afghanistan and in so many places in the world. And so we lift all of them up as we gather this evening. So maybe we could just take a moment calling to mind the Spirit here with us. And just sharing a part of a brief reflection from Father Michael Judge, Franciscan chaplain, and the book, Give Us This Day. And we all remember on that bright fall morning of September 11, 2001, firefighters from across New York were summoned to a scene of unimaginable horror. 2 hijacked airliners had crushed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. As firefighters rushed into the burning buildings, they were accompanied by their chaplain, Father Michael Judge. Hundreds of them would die that day. Among them, nearly 3,000 fatalities in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. And Father Judge would be among them. In the days that followed, the story of his life and his sacrifice would become known around the world. Now, how he had joined the Franciscans at the age of 15, how he had acquired a wide reputation for his ministry among the poor and homeless, alcoholics, victims of AIDS, and for his outreach to the LGBTQ+ community and to others alienated or marginalized in the church. There were stories about his own struggles with alcohol and his recovery with the help of Alcoholics Anonymous. and the stories of his love for the firefighters, his courage in joining them on the front lines, his support as they coped with stress and sorrow. There seemed to be a special meaning in the fact that Father Mychal was listed as the first certified casualty of 9/11. A photograph of his fellow firemen carrying his body from the wreckage to a neighboring church became an icon of that day, an image of loving sacrifice and service, a hopeful answer to the message born of fear and fanaticism. And so I'd like to just share a sentence from his writings. When I don't know what's next, I get down on my knees and pray, Lord, take me, mold me, fashion me, show me what you want. Then I watch and listen, and it will come.
Thank you, Father Fred. As Father Fred said, today we remember all those who gave their lives in the horrific terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001 in New York City, at the Pentagon, and in Shanksville, PA. Shortly after All Saints Parish opened in November of 2008, the LGBTQ+ task force was established. Soon after, an initiative was undertaken to install a sculpture of Father Mychal Judge, OMF, titled First from the Flames, as a centerpiece of our gardens, intended to remind all, but especially the LGBTQ youth, that All Saints Church is a community of inclusion and unconditional acceptance. In 2017, in conjunction with the 16th anniversary of the events of 9/11, we inaugurated our All Saints Parish Father Mychal Judge Memorial Award and Lecture Series, dedicated to honoring the legacy of Father Mychal Judge, OFM, chaplain of the New York City firefighters and first recorded casualty of the 9/11 terrorist attack at the World Trade Center Twin Towers. The award recognizes persons and or work that carries on Father Mychal's unconditional service, including tireless work with the LGBTQ+ community, HIV/AIDS patients, and persons with addictions. Tonight, we are pleased to present the Father Mychal Judge Memorial Award to Syracuse Gay, Lesbian, Catholics, and Friends, in recognition for the first ministry to LGBTQ+ Catholics in our Syracuse diocese. And we are honored to have with us Catholic journalist and author Mary Jo McConahay, here to discuss her recent book, Playing God, American Catholic Bishops in the Far Right. Here to present the award is Bill Tennedy, task force member and early member of the Syracuse Gay, Lesbian, Catholics, and Friends. Bill?
Good evening, everybody. Before presenting the award, we thought it would be a good idea to give you a brief history of the group that I was a part of, Syracuse Gay and Lesbian Catholics and Friends. So if you'll bear with me, and our first slide is up there. Mark Sorcelletti on the left and Mark Morris, who shared a relationship for 33 years, met in Buffalo at a church picnic hosted by Dignity Buffalo, a national organization for estranged gay and lesbian Catholics who wanted to participate more fully in the church. After moving to Syracuse in 1987, the two Marks met a Roman Catholic priest, Father Bill Reagan, who had wanted to establish a Dignity chapter in Syracuse. The three joined forces to establish not a Dignity chapter, but the Syracuse Gay and Lesbian Catholics and Friends in 1990. The first events consisted of twice a month liturgies conducted in the community room of the Nob Hill Apartments where Mark and Mark lived at the time. Advertising was by word of mouth and announcements in the Syracuse Pink Paper. All you old-timers like me remember that. A monthly newsletter for the gay and lesbian community. Eventually, the group distributed handbills in the gay and lesbian bars. This was old school, before the internet. In the early 90s, the group began meeting at the Episcopal Church of the Savior on James Street, an inclusive community to this day. The group met twice a month for Roman Catholic Mass, with the legendary potluck supper following the Mass on the first Sunday of the month. And boy, did we eat. After attendance increased significantly, once the group found a sacred place to meet for liturgy, it was at this point that the group became part of the fabric of the Syracuse gay and lesbian community. And you can go to the next one, Meg. Okay, good. After 2 years of meeting at the Church of the Savior, members expressed the desire to meet in a Roman Catholic sanctuary. Meeting outside Roman Catholic walls was a constant reminder that we were not accepted. A delegation approached Father Joseph Kane at St. Andrew's Church to inquire about using the sanctuary for our masses. With no ensuing discussion, Father Kane replied, "When do you want to start?" Meeting in a Roman Catholic space for the first time was an emotional experience. And next. Many of us felt we had finally arrived back home. The group flourished during the years at St. Andrew's, with Mass attendance running at 50 or 60 people at times, some of them regular parishioners of St. Andrew's. Not all were Roman Catholic. The group served as a spiritual home for many who could not find acceptance elsewhere, and many of the members began attending Sunday Mass with the St. Andrew Parish on the weeks the group did not meet. We had become part of the parish. With the closing of St. Andrew's Church building, the group needed to find a new home. This was a difficult time for the group, as it was for the entire St. Andrew's community. We were offered a safe home at both St. Lucy's and All Saints. Ultimately, the group moved to All Saints and was immediately embraced as part of the parish. For many of us, the group became not only a spiritual home, but also a social one, with annual picnics at Mark and Mark's, holiday parties, and potluck dinners. Next. And next. And next. And next. After a few years at All Saints, things were slowly changing in society and in the progressive camp of the Roman Catholic Church. LGBTQ people were finding that more avenues were open for participation in churches across the community, both Catholic and Protestant. The group had served its purpose of offering church community during a time when it was hard to come by. Attendance at the group's masses dropped as people found other spiritual homes. So it was time to end this journey of 20-plus years and to start a new one. And the end of one era and the beginning of a new one here at St. Andrews, or All Saints. Thank you. The award this year reads Mark Sorcelletti, Mark Morris, and Father Bill Reagan, and the Syracuse Gay and Lesbian Catholics and Friends, September 11th, 2024. I'm going to ask Mark Morris if he would come up on the altar, please, to help accept this award. And Mark Sorcelletti, who unfortunately is no longer with us, is being represented by his nephew, Chris. So if they would come forward. And also, any members from the old group that are here, please come on up and accept this award. And stop hiding. I see you all out there. on a personal note, I just have to tell you that for me personally, this group saved me. I had been away from the Catholic Church for over 20 years, and I finally found a home and felt welcome back in the church. So, and now we're here and we're very welcome. So, thank you. They don't get to keep it. It stays here at the church. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Mark. You guys made a huge difference in a world that was not accepting. Unfortunately, the more things change, sometimes the more they stay the same. Tonight, it's my honor to introduce to you journalist Mary Jo McConahay. Mary Jo McConahay began covering Guatemala and Central America as a correspondent in the 1980s. Her work has appeared in more than 30 magazines and periodicals, including Rolling Stone, San Francisco Chronicle, Time, and Vogue. In her recent book, Playing God, American Catholic Bishops in the Far Right, Mary Jo McConahay tells the story of how the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops have become one of the most formidable and reactionary forces in America by campaigning to alter democratic institutions under the guise of religious liberty and allying with major right-wing contributors such as the Kochs. Mary Jo McConahay.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all. Thanks so much for being here. I want to congratulate you for your interest in this subject. And thanks to people apparently who are watching. So, you know, September 11th will always live in our memories. But January 6th, 2021 is another date that's seared into the memory. Like many of you, before that day, I never in my life thought I would see thousands of people, including many bearing crosses, images of the Virgin Mary, and Christian messages, see them converge on the Capitol to overturn a presidential election. I'm a journalist. I've covered coups. At the moment of a coup, when you find out whether or not the military supports the government or the coup makers, you really pay attention because that's an important moment. And I kept waiting for the moment that day. Which way was the military going to go? Well, of course, the military stayed in support of the government, and that was a good thing. It was a good thing then. That's why I wrote Playing God. Whoa, I meant to have the book here, but maybe you've seen it. That's right. Thank you. Almost perfectly prepared. That's why I wrote this book. I was shocked, and I was angry at seeing those symbols that I held dear. And I was curious, why? My research led me to an answer that equally shocked and appalled me, that millions in our country embraced white Christian nationalism, and that our own American Catholic bishops, in alliance with far-right Catholic and non-Catholic laypeople, many with deep pockets, and with like-minded evangelical Christians, aim to implant a nationalist Christian dispensation in the law and culture of the United States. They believe that the founding fathers, note that there are no founding mothers, and that'll become important as we go along, The founding fathers intended for it to be that way, is the belief behind Christian nationalism. And so those who support it believe that their own moral point of view ought to be the rule for everybody throughout the land. Let me just read. This is not going to be a reading presentation, but you know what? Can you hand me my copy? Because that's the one that's marked. Okay. Okay. Oh, good. So thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry. Is this one? No, this one's mine, I think, because it's got my pen stuck to it. So it's not mine, but you know what? I think I know where it is. Mine's in my bag. Never mind. Unless I signed it to, I may have signed it to somebody that came up here beforehand. So you've got a marked copy. Why is the posture of the American Catholic bishops important, not just to Catholics? They lead 73 million believers in the United States, more than a fifth of the population. Catholics vote. 75% voted in 2016. That's high compared to how many people usually vote. And since 1952, their vote usually goes to the winning presidential candidate. The active members of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, about 274 men, almost all beyond middle age and white, represent one of the most powerful lobbying groups in America. Their Office of Government Relations is charged with directing activities to influence the actions of Congress. The bishops influence what goes on in every Catholic parish in America. But these days, U.S. bishops do not reflect the global Catholic Church. As a group, they are a particularly American species, hierarchical to a fault, and so traditionalist and politically right-wing that they are out of step with the current occupant of the chair of St. Peter, Pope Francis. The distance between the U.S. Bishops' Conference and the Vatican has placed the U.S. Church on the verge of schism. Now, I have no animus toward the Catholic Church or its bishops. As a lifelong Catholic, including years reporting from Latin America, I have seen the extent to which my co-religionists, including bishops, have gone, even to the point of martyrdom, on behalf of the people, on behalf of other people and of justice. At the same time, I've always believed that the institution of the church was worth investigation and critique. So as a reporter, indeed as a Catholic, I felt it was time to look at the U.S. Church as a key institution, playing an outsized role in the current dangerous political movement. As we approach elections, the elephant in the room, right? I hope to explain why I think white Christian nationalism is so critical for us to know about. For Catholics, it's important to see how our bishops encourage it, or, in grave sins of omission, one might say, fail prophetically to name it and call it out. Studies indicate, and there's, by the way, 40 pages of sources in here, so when I say studies, you can look them up. The studies say that 20 to 30% of Americans are Christian nationalists or sympathizers. That number rises to 2/3 among certain religious groups. They have an outsized influence on U.S. politics. Now, Christian nationalism is not, it's not patriotism, which is a positive value, love of country. Christian nationalism has to do with the way our country is defined. Christian nationalists believe the American nation is defined by a particularly traditionalist view of Christianity, and that the government should take active steps to keep it that way. The American bishops see themselves, this is, by the way, not every single bishop, but the vast majority of bishops see themselves as but it is the majority in the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. They see themselves in a fight against secularism and sometimes against constituted government authority, and that's a trope at the core of Christian nationalism. Take the COVID pandemic. Many U.S. bishops were anti-vaxxers and otherwise chipped away at the authority of government institutions. They did not want to render unto Caesar what was Caesar's. One after another encouraged attendance at Mass with or without masks, even while civilian authorities were limiting gatherings. The bishops suggested that resistance to government directives was a freedom of religion issue. Think back, we just heard about the freedom, the liberty issues, right? It's a ruse. My own archbishop, I'm from San Francisco, Salvatore Cordileone, boasted that he didn't get vaccinated because he had a healthy constitution. He said church closings single out Catholics, which they did not. But grievance and claims of persecution are another white nationalist trope. White Christian nationalism includes patriarchy. We could spend an entire evening, and I have on other occasions and other places, speaking about the less than full participation currently permitted to women and girls in the U.S. Catholic Church. Hundreds of women priests who decided not to wait until vocations were recognized. But for tonight's purposes, let me read you a quote from an extensive body of research by two investigators who also teach sociology and religious studies. And here's the quote: "Christian nationalism is intimately intertwined with Americans' definition of the family and the proper roles for women and men within the family." This resonates perhaps with those that are reading the newspapers, with the comments of the vice presidential candidate for the Republican Party, J.D. Vance, who is a traditionalist Catholic. The stakes are high, and in this view, because having families that conform to God's ideal standard, as the Christian nationalists see it, are a vital step toward having a country that he will bless with prosperity. So the Dobbs decision, we know a couple of years ago, that overthrew Roe versus Wade, that was made by a majority that included the 3 justices appointed by President Trump on a 9-member bench, of which 7 judges were raised Catholic, is not the end of the fight to retain individual rights under the Constitution. I suggest anyone who is interested to read, it's on the internet, Clarence Thomas's, one of the longest serving, in fact, Supreme Court Justice, to read his concurrence with the majority in Dobbs. It's clear as a bell. He says clearly that the next cases that the court should review are decisions that until now have protected contraception, same-sex relations, and same-sex marriage. Christian nationalism implies white supremacy, and U.S. bishops have failed to condemn its manifestations. Especially worrying at this moment is their failure to stand up against the wave of voter suppression laws aimed at the poor and people of color. The 2013 decision, Shelby versus Holder, gutted the Voting Rights Act, and that had long mandated federal oversight of election laws in states with a record of disenfranchising Black voters. Since then, since that decision, the gap in turnout rates between white and non-white voters in affected jurisdictions has grown almost twice as quickly as elsewhere. Since the 2020 elections, and maybe you remember that's when the Republicans slipped down a bit in popular votes, Republican lawmakers in 49 states have introduced more than 400 bills to limit voting itself. The silence from the bishops has been deafening. In the wake of the murder of George Floyd that year, Pope Francis told a meeting of social activists, in that protest against his death, there was a collective Samaritan who is no fool. It was a clear endorsement of action in the face of injustice. 94% of the protests, by the way, quote unquote, involved no violent or destructive behavior, according to the US Crisis Monitor, and you can see the sources in the book. So Pope Francis, again, echoing the Samaritan story, said, this movement did not pass by on the other side of the road when it saw the injury to human dignity caused by an abuse of power. But the president of the US Bishops' Conference, Jose Gomez of Los Angeles, called solidarity and social justice movements like Black Lives Matter an expression of secularization, which means de-Christianization. They were pseudo-religions, aiming to replace Christianity in America, he said, part of the effort to erase the Christian roots of society and to suppress any remaining Christian influences. You know, the bishops have written very few teaching documents about race, even though a theologian friend of mine and lots of people have called it the original sin of our country. In 1988, one of the few documents was called Brothers and Sisters to Us. Get that title. As if it were a view from the bishops of the otherness of Black Catholics. Brothers and sisters to us. Now, one of the few voices that was raised in protest when Gomez made his statements was also one of the few African American theologians in the US Church, Reverend Brian Massengill of Fordham University. He said, white nationalism is the real idolatrous pseudo-religion that poses a grave threat to both national unity and authentic Christian faith. What's very painful to me, just because I'm very interested in it personally, is the US bishops' failure to support Pope Francis on the environment, climate change, care for our common home. Cardinal Raymond Burke, who's considered a leader of the very conservative wing, which is, as I said, the majority of the American bishops, dismissed all that concern as a push for worship of Mother Earth. Laudato Si, so he's calling it pagan, right? Laudato Si, the Pope's 2015 scientifically based encyclical. Remember that as Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Pope Francis, well, he wasn't Pope Francis then, he was Jorge. He worked as a scientist in Buenos Aires. He was a chemist before starting to study to be a priest. I met the daughter of his boss at the time. Laudato Si is a critique of unfettered capitalism, very scientifically based and, of course, faith-based. A critique of consumerism that causes climate change and harm most the poor of the world. But the bishops of the largest capitalist country in the world, ours, which consumes the most, not only failed to promulgate the Pope's teaching, they ignored it. And this is not just an impression. Data scientists at Creighton University published a report on thousands of columns written by bishops over the 5 years following Laudato Si for their official diocesan publications, and that's where most of the public teaching of the bishops comes from. And they found that a mere 0.8% mentioned climate change at all. That is 0.8%. And of these, just half described it in terms that suggested it is real. Studies have shown that conservative political identity is the best predictor of climate change denial. And let me just tell you one more thing about the climate change. I'll just tell you how anomalous the US bishops are. Since Laudato Si, some 354 Catholic institutions in 50 countries have divested of fossil fuels, which the Vatican counsels. But not one US diocese has taken its money out of oil and gas. Some dioceses lease out land that they own to oil companies. The US bishops, their own socially responsible investment guidelines, you can find them online for Catholics, from 2021, that's pretty recent, still did not rule out investment in fossil fuel companies or other operations that destroy the government, despite Vatican direction, but it did, for instance, add a ban on providers of transgender health care. 1 year ago, the Pope published a short encyclical called, a letter called Laudate Deum, but it was a very blunt call to action. It reads with a sense of sadness, but also of urgency. In Laudate Deum, he speaks in specific terms. He singles out the United States as the world's largest per capita polluter. So the US bishops, for all their capacity and leadership and responsibility, made no comment about that encyclical. The bishops are not averse to taking money from non-Catholic billionaires who make their money from fossil fuels. Charles Koch pours, he's a very well-known billionaire, makes his money from fossil fuels. He pours money into 40 of the bishops' Catholic universities and colleges in their diocese. With his business partner, Tim Bush, he established a business school at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., as part of his talent pipeline to a libertarian economy, as he calls it. And as Bush calls it, a center for Catholic capitalism. Well, there is no such thing as Catholic capitalism. There's no such thing as Catholic Marxism, just saying. So I think it's important, Father Fred thought it might be important to just mention this about the money pipeline. Tim Bush, that I just mentioned, is the founder of the Napa Institute. Have people heard of the Napa Institute? It's in the beautiful Napa Valley, right near us in San Francisco. It's a yearly meeting where conservative bishops and conservative Catholics can meet and press the flesh, and new apostolates like Focus, which is very important on campuses, they look for money. Its speakers have included Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, until he was removed by the Pope last year, and Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance. In 14 years, the Napa Institute has grown into a juggernaut for traditionalist U.S. Catholicism, with new programs for youth, business operators, and seminarians. And a new Washington, this is brand new, Washington Center near the Capitol and near the Opus Dei Center. Along with the bishops, the wealthy Leonard Leo is on the Napa board. Does that name ring any bells? Okay. He is as some know, a founder of the Conservative Federalist Society. It's a law for lawyers and judges, and he's called the court whisperer. He was the advisor to former President Trump on the selection of the justices who now make up the conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court. Long ago, Leo, who is a daily mass goer, he realized that public thought was evolving to accept gay relationships, divorce, abortion, which are anathema to fundamentalist conservatives like him. They were the culture wars that he would not give up fighting. He decided they could be won in the courts. Since it seems as if the court is pretty well now under the control of the far right, he has turned his attention to the media and to education. And conveniently, he just received 1.6 billion, that's billion with a B, from a donor for that cause. His money now is going toward voter suppression, which we just talked about, and to having a kind of federalist society for people in the media. That's very important. Let me just mention about Islamophobia. Many, because I understand there are a lot of immigrants here in this region from Africa, many of them may be Muslim. Many other politically conservative traditionalist Catholics with deep pockets support the agenda of the most conservative bishops. Do you have Domino's Pizza around here? Okay, I guess it's everywhere. Thomas Monaghan, its founder, established Thomas More Law Center, one of several Christian advocacy law firms that reside at the crossroads of church and state. One of its declared interests is confronting the threat of radical Islam. Islamophobia is a Christian nationalist trope. And remember how the Pope very early met with some of the most honored, revered figures in Islam, and even signed a declaration of friendship with them. And where was the Pope last week? Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim country. The Pope is not a Christian nationalist, and he is not an Islamophobe, and he does not want Catholics to be Islamophobes. Now, I should say that Monaghan's center also partnered with Charles Koch's political advocacy group to win a 2021 Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court is so important in what we're talking about here. It allows charities and nonprofit organizations like the multiple groups set up by Leonard Leo, and believe me, there are multiple. While I was writing this book, I had a huge, really, really big whiteboard on my wall. I said, well, let's see all these groups that Leonard Leo is involved in. I put Leonard Leo. And you know, that thing turned into like a spider web. It was absolutely astounding what this dark money allows individuals with money to do and the groups that they can affect. You know, the Koch, many people who do not want Charles Koch on campus call his network the Coctopus, whatever. So let me go back to asking this question that I think you may want to know. You know that the bishops were not always this way. In the 80s, I'm going to have to wing this because now that I've gone through what Father Fred suggested I did, which I'm glad I did, I've lost my place. But in the 80s, the bishops were very prophetic compared to what they are now. They were against segregation. They wrote a very important letter called Economic Justice for All, which called out the Reagan administration for its neoliberal economic policies which hurt the poor. They stood against nuclear proliferation. And they stood against the Reagan administration for supporting these ultra right-wing autocracies in Central America, which were killing thousands of their own people in the name of anti-communism. And they didn't, they wrote very important public letters saying that this was not right. And they didn't just get their ideas from the newspapers. I was covering El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala at the time, and I would meet with them when they came. I mean, not that they were going to listen to me, but I saw how closely they watched what was happening and how closely they listened to the Salvadorans, Nicaraguans, and Guatemalans who were there. And it was from that they wrote these letters that were extremely, extremely important. So how did this change happen? So that today we have a conference of less than prophetic U.S. bishops, I'm going to suggest, at war with the Pope himself. Well, John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI, who were much more conservative than Pope Francis, and Pope Benedict, of course, was taking much of his counsel in the United States from Archbishop Vigano, who has since been relieved of his duties by Pope Francis. But also, I mark the change from about 1970, when the U.S. political atmosphere in which the current bishops matured began, including and especially with the activism of traditionalist lay Catholics who rejected Vatican II, like a man named Paul Weyrich. His name is not well known and his importance has been underestimated. It should not be underestimated. He, along with Richard Viguerie, Phyllis Schlafly, other people who were important in the 70s and 80s politically, worked with him. Weyrich was a Washington operative, a traditional Catholic, traditionalist, it's different, who believed that the political right was too focused on economics and political foreign policy, with little to say about the way people led their personal lives. He would create what he called a new religious right, and the Republican Party would serve as its vessel. Notice I didn't say that the Republicans picked up on the new religious right. No, it wasn't that way. The right decided it was the Republican Party which would serve as the vessel for this plan that they had to turn the country toward their thoughts and proclivities. Weyrich, remember, as I said, he rejected the reforms of Vatican II. And Vatican II said that the church should be a moral beacon, clarifying the important issues of its time, but should remain separate from government. Weyrich disagreed. He believed that the founding fathers intended for this to be a Christian nation. Key to his thinking was American exceptionalism, the belief that God ordained the U.S. to be unique in the world, morally superior, prosperous, and destined to lead other countries. Weyrich knew that Catholics alone could not pull the country to the right, but that millions of fundamentalist white Christian evangelicals were potentially a giant block to harness for the cause. A colleague called the largest tract of virgin timber on the political landscape. But evangelicals didn't vote then. They believed politics was not part of their calling, and they considered abortion a Catholic issue about which their leaders were equivocal. Instead, their most important issue of the day was maintaining racial discrimination under the guise of religious freedom. They were furiously building schools. Remember that the Brown decision, Brown versus the Board of Education, had mandated integration of public education. So for the new right, Weyrich needed the millions of voters evangelicals might command, but his political acumen told him that racism was not an attractive, broad-based, mobilizing tool. Abortion might be. So Paul Weyrich put aside his traditionalist impulses against ecumenism, and in 1976 traveled to Lynchburg, Virginia, to meet with Jerry Falwell, probably the most famous white evangelical preacher of the day, radio programs, personal appearances. He was big. Jerry Falwell shared Weyrich's view of the unchristian drift of the country. Weyrich told him together they could turn the tide on the secularization of society. He said, this is Weyrich talking, out there is what one might call a moral majority. The movement took off. Evangelicals, this is a moral majority movement, evangelicals were told it was a sin not to vote. Abortion was the flagship issue. The new religious right endorsed Ronald Reagan, who had signed, I remember this, in California, he was the governor. He had signed a pro-abortion law when he was governor of California. But as president, having been elected with the support of Christian nationalists, now using the Republican Party as a vessel, he railed against it and said the answers to all the problems known to man can be found in the Bible. Weyrich co-founded or founded several important Washington institutions, like the Secretive Council on National Policy, a very important group to know about. It connects conservative policy promoters with the big money, and they have these, meetings in luxurious kind of hidden places. And the powerful Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a think tank which first presented policy templates to the Reagan administration, and then every succeeding Republican administration, as well as lists of vetted conservative individuals who then were taken in by the administrations to government posts. So fast forward to 2024, and the newest Heritage Foundation blueprint for a Republican administration has been written by many who worked for the previous Trump administration. I'm sure you've heard of it or will be hearing of it, Project 2025. It's a 900-page document. I haven't read it all, but I read specific areas in which I was very interested. And it not only did it appear to me then, but many people have said, many Catholics have said, that this document is diametrically opposed to Catholic social teaching. It would eliminate the federal Head Start program, roll back workers' rights, gut the Affordable Care Act, legalize discrimination against the LGBTQ+ community, and weaponize the U.S. Department of Justice against a president's political opponents. So both candidate Trump and Steve Miller, who is his immigration czar, have laid out plans aligned with Project 2025, and they've said this publicly, to expel millions of undocumented immigrants, not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, millions, mostly from Latin America, but from Africa and elsewhere, in a next administration. I don't know if you saw the debate, but there was no denial of this when it was brought up last night. These could be people already living here for years or decades, including DACA recipients. Those are the young adults brought in as babies without papers by their parents. Yeah, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that for millions of people? Massive holding camps in the Southwest desert for hundreds of thousands of undesirables. I'm not kidding. While they're waiting for deportation. And if you think it can't happen, remember what happened to US citizens of Japanese descent and only a few decades ago. Recently, I went on a 3-day pilgrimage to South Texas with survivors of one of the camps run by the State Department during World War II. Their memories, we spent 3 days together. It was over 3 days. Their memories were as fresh and traumatic. And of course, at this point, many of them were children at the time. But the memories were as fresh and traumatic as the experience was then. And they had no doubt it could happen again. Some of their families had been jailed under the Enemy Aliens Act, which Trump has promised to reintroduce. How are these millions going to be gathered and guarded? By U.S. armed forces, including federally deputized National Guard on our own soil. The Posse Comitatus Act from the 1880s, I think, bars using the military in law enforcement against U.S. citizens, but a future Trump administration, he said this quite clearly, would invoke an exception under the Insurrection Act for people protesting, such as those who protested the murder of George Floyd. So, and this last thing on the immigration, federal troops would also patrol that border with Mexico, and I've spent a lot of time reporting in the towns on that border, and I can tell you it's already highly militarized, including technologically advanced remote observation stations, I've been in them, manned by veterans of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. I can just imagine what it would be like to go south should it be a Republican administration after the elections, and see troops along this 2,000-mile border that runs from California to New Mexico to Arizona. What's the other one? Texas. Thank you. Let me jump ahead here and just ask what can be done. The most effective weapon against Christian nationalism is the vote. Not just your own, but 1 or 2 or 3 people that you can talk to and say vote. Paul Weyrich famously said, "I don't want everybody to vote. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the election quite candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down." Numbers, get numbers to vote. Talk to our bishops, ask them, where are you investing the money that we put in the basket on Sundays? And we might consider when and how our own bishops buy into white Christian nationalism or fail to stand up against it. With study, observation, and prayer, we can trust our own discernment on issues and candidates that are before us and guard against nationalist inroads which threaten democracy. Because no matter who wins in November, white Christian nationalism will be with us as a threat to democracy. It will not be going away. So thank you.
question.
Call for questions.
Give,
Yeah.
give me a little break.
Good idea.
All right.
Okay, so I'll wait for someone to. Okay. Got it.
How about we just take a little stretch? Give Mary Jo a little break, and then in about 5-10 minutes at the most, no more than 10. 3, 4, 5. Father Fred said 2 minutes. Oh boy. I'm in a heap of trouble again. I'm going to say 5. Just stretch your legs, enjoy the fine dining experience we have in the greeting area. And Mary Jo will be back with us just to answer some questions. Thank you. My 5 minutes is almost up, just a warning. You guys make your way. This thing on. Pardon me? He's right there. Is this thing on? Yes, it is. Guys, find your way back, please. Find your way back to seats. We'll get our program back underway. If you can make your way back to your seats, please. Need to get going here. Let's find a seat, please. Oh my God. Thank you. Get back underway, please. Where'd the boss go? Pardon me? I am stronger. Meg, do we have arrangements to get questions? Okay. All right, thank you, folks. Let's find a seat, and we'll move on into some dialogue with Ms. McConahay. Ms. McConahay is as interested in hearing from us as we were from her. There will be, folks, let's find a seat, please. Back in the pew.
Can I be heard?
There will be a microphone available. I believe Bill has it.
Oh,
For questions.
all right.
For those watching from home, you will find phone numbers. Meg, next screen. Meg, next screen. Next screen. You'll find a couple of phone numbers you can text questions to. We will definitely try to get them answered, or if you have comments, we will definitely get them read in church.
Okay, good, and I've
So,
got a lavalier for answers.
Let's get going.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Eh,
you. Oh, thanks very
anyone-
much. Well, congratulations to,
Anyone
for
with
that award
comment,
and
just
everything.
raise a hand. A
Yes.
microphone will come to you, or if you have a
Do know
question,
Richard Rodriguez?
feel free, just pop the hand up. Don't be shy. I think Father Fred's kicking this off. Yeah.
I want to tell you later.
These?
As I think of literature is very important, but also Huh? In San Francisco. Yeah, yeah. You have a question? Yes. I beg your pardon?
Just a quick story to get us started. Some of us with gray hair might remember just following the lecture. Back in the 1980s, when President Reagan was president, Catholic Charities in Syracuse was celebrating either their 100th anniversary or 150th or 75th or whatever it was. So they wanted it to be a big, big thing. Bishop Harrison was away on vacation. It was in February. So they sent out an invitation to the White House inviting President Reagan to be the keynote speaker at the Catholic Charities event. Bishop Costello never thought it would ever happen, but he took Bishop Harrison's stamp on the invitation. Lo and behold, the White House got a hold of the diocese and said, President Reagan will be there and would be very happy to be the keynote speaker. This is true. This is actually true. Because it tied right in to his whole trickle-down philosophy, and that the charities and the government shouldn't be involved in all these programs. So Bishop Harrison came back and found that the President Reagan was coming, and he uninvited the president. He uninvited the president, and he didn't say this publicly to the press, but he did to anybody who wanted to listen to him. He said, I'm uninviting President Reagan because what his administration stands for is neither Catholic or charitable.
Thank you for a great presentation and very sobering information that you gave us. And we're all people, mature people of the gospel, and we try to align our decisions with Jesus. What would Jesus do? But sadly, I'm a priest. We priests, generally speaking, bishops, have done a very poor job of teaching Catholic social teaching. Most of our people do not know that. So I'm just wondering, it's a very scary time in our country for this election, upcoming election. God forbid himself should win that, but if so, you've enumerated some of the things that he would do, perhaps another Muslim ban of taking these.
That's for sure.
That's for sure.
They've already said it.
Getting rid of the immigrants going down to the border, so on and so forth. What can we do as a people, not only Catholic, but with civil disobedience, to raise a question or awareness that this is, I'm going to say this is not who we are, but it is who we are, with all the violence in our country. But I know, you could look at the March of Martin Luther King. 250,000 people went to Washington, which was so critically important for getting civil rights in our country. Other countries, solidarity, workers' rights. The Philippines, Power of the People, the march throughout the cities, led by a wonderful cardinal down there, so on and so forth around the world. Do you have any suggestions of some kind of civil disobedience we can do, of taking to the streets, or we went to the airports once when there was the Muslim ban that happened throughout the country, so on and so forth. But just a question, do you have any ideas along those lines?
I'd also like to throw that question out, Father, to others. I think a general principle is be prepared for it, and be prepared perhaps to engage in it, depending on the situation after November, and pray. And start now. Start now, because reaching out to groups, I'm not going to give you, plus I can't give you a name of a particular group, but start now. It's not hard to find groups that are actively involved in what? In the elections now. And you can bet that those people who are involved in the elections will be involved in whatever action needs to come. So what?
The key states are North Carolina and the other ones, not New York State. You guys are more democratic, so there's nothing you can do here. You gotta go outside.
If you can go, go. I remember, absolutely. If you're a person, if you're a person who can travel, get in touch with these groups and say, hey, I can travel to another state. We did that for Nevada and in California. Who's going to vote Republican? I mean, there are Republicans, but it's a blue state. And when Obama was running the first time, we just called up, a friend of mine and I called up the local Democratic Party office and said, hey, do you need some volunteers? And we did phones and they said, can you travel? I said, yeah, we can travel. So go to Nevada, because it was, and is actually, in play. And so they were telling all the people from my area, San Francisco, the north, to drive over to Reno, and all the people from Southern California, LA, went over to Las Vegas, and then they find out you can speak Spanish, or if you can speak another language, if you can speak German, if you can speak, anything that makes you a little bit more valuable with reaching out, let them know. Say, I'm a former school teacher, I'm a former Catholic nun, or I am a Catholic nun. But get in touch with the people who are interested in the elections, and then follow it up if and when activity of civil disobedience nature is required. Because with peaceful civil disobedience also, is any veterans, any people went to the School of the Americas or anything like that to do the protests, right? One of the things you need to always watch for are people that are gonna kind of throw a wrench into it. You gotta, just be careful who you're dealing with. But these groups that are pushing for the elections at this time, I think might be a place to start. Preparation is really important. And by the way, that's not like in November. That's right now.
Yeah. I wanted to add to your statement. Yes, New York is Democratic, but right here in Onondaga County, we have a congressman who is part of that right wing. And so we need to gather the vote for all the down ballots as well as the top ballot. And I think that's very important for us to remember. Yeah, we're primarily Democratic in the state, but not in Onondaga County, so we have work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to travel, because what's very important is also the Congress, the upcoming Congress, and of course Senate seats. Everyone that I know that's active in California, or not California, but in my area, the bubble of San Francisco Bay Area, is going out to the valley or down to Southern California, where there are very important congressional elections going on. So thank you for that.
And for the presidential states that are swing states, there are organizations that will get you in touch with letter writing campaigns.
Oh, that's really important.
Because
yeah.
getting every single voter to the poll is important. And they'll get you a list of people to write to, because it's very simple, and it's just a letter or a postcard and a postage stamp. And all you do is write a nonpartisan letter in your own personal handwriting that says, I'm so excited to vote in this election, and I hope you're excited about voting too. Please remember that the voting date is such and such a date, and get out there and vote. And then you handwrite their address on the envelope.
It's
and
so
put a stamp
important,
on.
being handwritten.
Yes, it's very important that it's handwritten so that it's not a form letter, and all you're doing is telling them to please vote. And they provide you a list of addresses for people who are undecided voters, because you just want them to go to the poll. And it'll be people from Pennsylvania or other swing states where those votes matter. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those organizations is Vote Forward, but there are lots of other places where they just need an invitation, a personal connection to be invited to go to the poll.
And if you want to be good to yourself, remember it really makes you feel good. You know, like when Nevada went for Obama, you know, you think, well, I did that. So
We all need to become Swifties.
right.
I heard within a few hours of her endorsement, there were over 300,000 hits on the voter page that she told young people.
Oh
to
my
vote.
gosh, good for
Now it's
Taylor
over 1 million? Yeah.
Swift. Good for her.
She's got the power after this lady.
Well, in fact, I just want to say, I was going to add, if any folks have connections, either in your own family or in your occupations or in your former jobs, to young people, please talk to them, get them to vote. Will I be telling any tales if I say that our waiter today? No, nobody knows where we're staying. So our waiter today, I said, do you know where I can get a newspaper? And he said, do they have newspapers? Yeah, I know. And he said, no, I don't know. He said, I never read the newspaper. Okay, it's fine. But we've got to be aware of that and reach out to young people who maybe don't think voting is a big deal, and talk to them personally. And if you know anybody in any youth groups, whether it's schools or other churches or institutions, please consider it your duty.
Thank you. What you were talking about, you can also do postcards. It's called Postcards to Swing States, .com, and they'll send you the postcards with a list of names, and they do it to Democrats to get them out to vote. But anyway, this is, we're in a church, 501c3, no politics and all that stuff. I'm more concerned about the bishops and the cardinals. What kind of civil action can happen, and is there any movement across the country that we can't be the only church that recognizes that Christian nationalism has nothing to do with the gospel of Jesus Christ? So I'm just wondering, is there any movement around the bishops and the cardinals to stop this kind of money wheel to bring about this, what we're talking about, keeping out of our government?
There are organizations of activist Catholics that you can find, and they have a wonderful, archives of material, but even more so right now, they are working on the elections, and it's really important to support them. And let me tell you why, because there are Catholic groups who are giving awards to people for wokeness and for, Ginny Thomas, for instance, who is the wife of Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court, is very involved in kind of the joining of evangelical Christian groups. She's a convert, she was Protestant before, and Catholic groups, and doing really the hard work of politics, and being able to speak to both Catholics and evangelicals. Well, Catholics can talk to Catholics, and they can talk to Protestants, and they can even talk to evangelical groups who are not white nationalist evangelical groups. So I realize I'm speaking rather in general, but maybe it will spark something in your mind from your own personal lives or your own personal relationships that could move you toward reaching out to other like-minded groups. Is a lady still there that asked that question? Oh, could you just say, did I answer that, or were you getting at something else? I wasn't. Oh, okay, great.
Hi.
Sorry to keep putting my back to you.
So I just kind of had a question kind of going off of what she asked. Just kind of based in your research, I was thinking, what kind of influence do you think it is trying to think how to phrase this. What part does the money, power, that kind of stuff play into it, and what part do you think, in terms of, bishops on the far right side, it's well-intentioned people who do want to preach the gospel and follow those, follow that kind of thing, or people who are just kind of like influenced by the power and the money and that kind of stuff. I don't know if that made sense the way I phrased that, but what's the ratio on that, do you think, in terms of, just based off the research you've done, in terms of people who just kind of go in that are bad seeds, so to speak, within the church, that are almost like bad seeds within the church, in terms of people that go in with preconceived beliefs that shouldn't probably be in that, or people that go in with the right beliefs but then are influenced by the things you were talking about, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Are you asking what grade of importance the money has to average persons who go in with good faith?
Yeah, I guess kind of just based off, that's kind of what I was wondering. Yeah, I guess in terms of in terms of the research you've done, what you've kind of seen between those two.
In terms of, just hold that mic right there.
Yeah, sorry. In terms of the research you've done, what you kind of see in terms of those two.
Okay, well, we're all human. We can all be swayed. We all read, watch TV, listen to the radio. There's a huge white nationalist. It's a real newspaper. That's great. Oh, I'm really glad. I'm going to show this to the waiter. Thank you. There's an entire chapter called "The Ministry of Propaganda" in my book, in which I delineate the strength, the first beginnings and the strength of the U.S. far-right Catholic media. Now, I've worked for National Catholic Reporter, which doesn't belong to that category, but many, many, many do, including the world's largest television broadcasting system, which is EWTN, a Catholic, very conservative Catholic it's advertising for some platform, very, very wealthy platform for the far-right bishops, okay? And they interchange some of the individuals on the EWTN programs, which are very popular, with Fox News, for instance, to give you, which is rather ultra-conservative broadcasting system. This is all about money, and it's all about influencing people. That's why I mentioned Leonard Leo, and the new $1.6 billion that he has is now going toward media and toward forming new journalists who can be kind of a Federalist Society for journalism. All of that takes big bucks. And so these, am I getting at what you're talking about?
Yeah, no.
And so that is how people of good faith, without investigating what they're reading, seeing, hearing. I mean, Monahan, that I mentioned, is the Pizza King. He's got Ave Maria Radio, which is very effective. This is very much about money, sadly. I loved it when Pope Francis said last week, he said, remember, the devil enters through the pocket. I liked that. So, okay, you can ask me again because I'm not sure I got it, but yeah. But that's why these alliances with non-Catholics, like Charles Koch, who has the same bottom line as the far-right Catholics, are very important. Yeah, you know, Tim Bush, his partner there, he says, oh, Koch is he told the Wall Street Journal, Koch is a Catholic, he just doesn't know it yet. So, I mean, he's joking about it, but I think that the underlying feeling there is that he's our kind of Catholic. And Tim Bush, of course, is the founder of Napa and the founder of that law school at Catholic University.
Okay. Our priest, Father Fred, he always says something very wise, and one of the things that stuck with me a lot, during a funeral, he'll say things like, or a homily that refers to it, you can't take it with you. So money is only good here on this plane, and you have to answer for what you do on the next plane. And as a black mother, we are too quiet. In U.S. history, we have suppressed what we've done to other minorities, but especially the black, the slaves, and they want to call us African Americans. We're just American Americans. Life evolved from Africa, so we're all African Americans. Let's drop all that. Let's let that go, because you don't know who's white and who's black anyway. What is white and black? It depends on how many people you want to get on your side to vote and all that stuff, and get the money. It's crazy. It's an irrelevant thing. When you want to transplant, you don't care what color somebody else was. It's your life and your death, and you want to get that transplant. So if you really, really, really want to see the importance of voting, and that's for local judges, school leaders, and the school board, and all that kind of stuff, because we're putting people in economic and education slavery. If you don't give them good schools, you keep burning books and all these crazy things that you want to put guns on teachers' pockets. They're stressed out enough already. And nobody feels safe going to school hardly anymore. And you want to know why your kids, it's not just COVID that did this to them, it's all this gun violence. But we don't want to address that, huh? No, we don't want to get rid of the guns out of the school. What are we going to do? We're going to arm the teachers. Yeah, sure, you got some crazy teachers, and you have some crazy politicians. Why can't they pass a mental test before they go to Congress for us? Come on, you don't want a crazy doctor operating on you. Why would you let somebody dissect your laws who's whacked out, crazy, I don't know what? But please, just do this, please. If you don't check with your younger people in your family for any other reason, I'm so tired of seeing our babies being killed. And they're killing each other because there's no respect for anybody's life, theirs and their brothers and sisters in life. And if you can't respect them, why would you think they would respect you? When we have them robbing and breaking into people's homes and stealing cars in our general neighborhood that never had it before, there's no such thing as a safe neighborhood anymore because people can travel. And when they get greedy and come out to where the real wealth is, oh, now you want to do something about it. Like when AIDS was striking the gay population and the minorities, oh, that's okay. But when it hit the white homes and the middle-class neighborhoods, oh, now you want to put more money into that. But the bishops didn't want to talk about that. No, when you go, I addressed the bishop and said, when can we address this in the pulpit? Oh, silence. I have a lack of respect for people who want to allow death to happen, like Trump during COVID. Oh, I did so much for you during COVID. No, you didn't. We were so glad we got a new president that was going to do something to help move us out of this death genocide going on. It's a genocide in black populations, and we don't say much about it on the news. You hear one occasionally, two maybe, but if you could hear the numbers that it's really happening to, and it's the legal people killing the children. A 7-year-old boy in the park with a play gun. Why would you shoot him? Just because he's a black kid? Maybe because he's a little bigger than others? What? If we don't stop this, then we're not true Christians. Jesus died for us, for all of us. Let us live and work for him. Amen.
Amen. There's absolutely nothing more that can be said to follow that, except I think of Brian Massinga, who is the African-American theologian, and I think we can't just let him be the only voice. He can't be the only voice. Where's that letter on racism we're waiting for? And don't call it brothers and sisters to us again. Get real. And
let's talk to our bishops. Let's write them letters. Let's, we're the flock. They're the shepherds. We have some say in this. We're not blind sheep. So there was another?
I think it's trying to look at another sort of aspect of coming at it besides just the political, and that's the faith aspect. If the Christian nationalists or people who think that Christianity and a particular conservative political approach was achievable through churches, through faith communities, what do we need to change about the way our faith is articulated? Just as you were saying, if there's one or two theologians or outspoken people, how do we get more people speaking about their faith from a perspective that challenges, Christian nationalism? I know I read about it in the NCR, but Christian nationalists have been working for years to put in place media and people in civil positions of authority. Is there, or have you seen, or have you read, or come across people who are trying to do the same thing from a Christian progressive point of view, besides call to action, which is really focused on church as institution? I don't know if so much as on the theology, the training of priests, women's ordination, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, they're out there. The women's ordination group, the Pittsburgh, what's it called? The Pittsburgh priests, what is it?
Catholics for Choice is another.
And Catholics Through Choice, who knows another one? Sorry? Future Church, that's right, Future Church. And, yeah, that's right. I've even done a Zoom with them. I forgot about that. You see, and where does it start? It starts right there. It starts right with you. You figure it out, okay? I mean, you figure it out. I can certainly appreciate the request for suggestions. There you are. The request for suggestions. But I just don't have those answers. You remember, I don't know if any of you know of Ivan Illich, who was a theologian and wonderful guy who used to say, when people would ask him, oh God, am I comparing myself to Ivan Illich? God forgive me. No, but he used to say to people, don't ask me for the answers. He said, I'm working on the questions. And that's why everybody now has the question. I mean, not just from tonight. You've got the question or you wouldn't come here. And we can all find our own answers, and I said with prayer and discernment.
You need youth. We have no energy. We're all getting older.
Oh, come on, I'm older too. We've all got energy once we start thinking of that.
It takes guts, and it takes energy. It takes guts. We're a little too comfortable to
Well, that's for sure.
we're too spoiled.
You got that. We've got time to get over that. So, there's no more monkeying around. This is really serious now.
Got
It's
time
really
help me to interrupt you, but we got time for about a couple more at the most. We got to keep moving. You're
Oh.
doing a great job, though.
Oh, okay. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we
just
can sign books.
one
Thank you,
second.
thank
I'm
you.
just going to do just a quick reminder. We do have copies of the book available, and hopefully sometime with Ms. McConahay for an autograph. So, books are available in the greeting area. A couple more comments with the author, and
And we can
we'll
talk
be wrapping
questions.
things up.
We can talk questions
Yeah.
afterward too. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. You and then you.
Amidst the gloom of the bishops' conference, there are some real points of light. Mark Seitz, Bishop Seitz, who's on the border, El Paso. He's with the migrants. He stands for the migrants. He is also head of a subcommittee there of the bishops. He just recently sent a letter to every bishop in the United States asking them to send out a letter in support of immigrants and refugees to be promulgated on World Day of Refugees and Immigrants, Sunday, September 29th. So what you can do is, I guess, a number of things. You might ask our local bishop, is he going to send out a letter as Mark Seitz has indicated. He sent him a sample letter. Obviously, he'll make his own. Hopefully, he'll do it. Number two, we see if your pastor will read it from the altar. Encourage your pastor to do that. Number three, agitate for some response to the letter, immigration, what we should do. So the ball's in our court on that one as church people. So you can do something. Thank you.
Yeah, Mark Seitz was one of the only bishops individually who went out against Archbishop Gomez's rant against Black Lives Matter. He's a fine man, and there are others, sir.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
You're certainly welcome.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I have a question or a concern from another direction, and that is that you've mentioned sociologists once or twice tonight.
I did.
So I would ask you then, while you're concerned with the direction of these conservative Catholic folks, Weirich and et al., is well placed, there's a demographic and a gerontological issue.
A demographic and what?
Gerontology. Issue. All right.
Explain what you mean there.
That basically the current stable of bishops is hopefully coming to the end of their their life too.
Go for it.
but they're standing as shepherds. They're standing as shepherds because they were appointed by John Paul and
Benedict.
Et cetera. Hopefully, on the one hand, there will be a new lineup of bishops at the starting line of the Derby, one. But also, more importantly, the old church, the immigrant Catholic Church of the 30s, 40s, 50s, et cetera, is passing, hopefully rapidly, from the scene. And the institutions, financial, land, et cetera, that they built are losing or have lost their relevance. And aside from selling them off to the highest bidder, selling off the institutions, the land, the capital institutional base for the hierarchy, presumably, as with the Protestants, the mainstream Protestants, should be fading.
Should be
fading. Okay, there is no more National Council of Churches.
Well, it's also being sold off because of the bankruptcies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that church, presumably, will pass from the scene. God knows what I guess he, she, they know what they have in store for what is coming. But we are likely to be facing a whole new unchurched, and I don't know what to call them, the nuns, right? And that institutional body, the authority figures, the ordinaries, the bishops, they are not going to have folks, except maybe Hispanics now, to speak for or to, because the children and the grandchildren of the immigrant church have left. So are we going to need to be as concerned as we are now about the Catholicity of the Weirichs, the Kochs, et al.? Am I going too far? You following me?
You're taking such a long view, if I may.
Okay.
that
But why,
it's
isn't Wire
almost-
Rich
let
over
me- Let me
70?
just say it right out.
Isn't Wire Rich over
It's
70?
almost meaningless for this moment.
Okay,
It's almost meaningless,
Okay.
with great respect for this moment.
okay.
And one church is all we've got. We don't have the immigrant church, which was so important for the assimilation of immigrants in their own communities. We don't have, 2 or 3 churches. We have one church. And we have one political system which is in great danger. And as Catholics, we can have something to say both about the future of our church and about the future of our democratic system. Okay, we're shrinking. We might end up being the Church of the Catacombs again. It's not a bad thing, maybe.
Let me interject here. I think we need to wrap this part up.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Thank you so much
This
for a
could go
very
on.
invigorating conversation. Thank you.
Just a couple more reminders. There is obviously a couple books left. On the way out the door, you'll see a little collection basket. We appreciate anything to help us to continue this ministry and bring people like Ms. McConahay to talk to us. I just want to thank Ms. McConahay for being with us. You've definitely enlightened us all on a very timely and important topic as we head into this presidential election. And I know I shouldn't say this, but go Swifties. The heck.